Typhoon Haikui takes aim for Taiwan on another busy day in the tropics. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 2nd. The Atlantic is a mess of storms and ex-storms and developing storms right now, and the Western Pacific has 3 active cyclones as well. Saola passing very close to Hong Kong and Macau and southern China as a very strong typhoon earlier, now much weaker. Day 94 of Atlantic hurricane season though, and we've got all of this action. Franklin and Jose really tangling up now. Jose and Franklin both extratropical as far as we're concerned, and so is Idalia still at this point. Gert, a tropical storm, 12L, could develop into a tropical storm as well, and a 70% chance already of her system emerging off the coast of Africa. Day 110 in the Eastern Pacific, chances in the Central Pacific have dropped on that system. Ex-Irwin still lingering, and now a 60% chance in the eastern part of the basin where we could see our next tropical cyclone. Western Pacific, of course, Saola still off the southern coast of China as a Category 1 now. Haikui strengthening Category 2 status and headed for Taiwan. And Kirogi, which is a tropical storm still, but only just. It may turn post-tropical at any time. And 2 areas that have a 30% chance of development over there, following in those footsteps as they move towards the northern part of the Philippine Sea. Indian Ocean, still quiet, not much going on here, but monsoonal patterns continuing across the Malay Peninsula. Saola right now still has a red typhoon warning for Zhuhai and Domen in China, an orange typhoon warning for Kaiping, Enping and Yanjiang, and other warnings elsewhere. It is just 11 kilometers from Guanghai, 87 from Yangjiang, 198 from Maoming, 263 from Zhanjiang and 340 from Haikou on Hainan. Signal 8 warnings still in effect for Hong Kong and Macau right now. The storm is moving away from those big conurbations. Haikui is currently 309 kilometers from Miyakojima, 322 from Tarama, 329 from Ishigaki, 584 from Taipei and 614 from Kaohsiung City. Gale advisories now in effect for those southern Ryukyu islands, including Okinawa, and we have blue typhoon warnings for the eastern coast of China. Taiwan haven't raised any warnings yet for typhoon, although they have sea warnings in effect now off the coast. This storm is strengthening and could become, probably will, a major typhoon in the next 24 hours. Let's check out the satellite imagery then. We only have wide views tonight because the Full City website appears to be having an issue. So here's a view of both of those typhoons right now, and you can see them quite clearly on the same panel. Of course, Saola moving away from the Hong Kong region, and of course Haikui there, which is getting stronger by the looks of things. And here is rapid scan imagery, the mesoscale on Himawari 9, showing quite well how this storm is wrapping up pretty nicely in those latest frames, with convective bursts really shooting up there, wrapping around what looks like we're going to end up seeing an eye there in the next 24 hours. Here's the infrared. You can see Saola a little bit better there. Western side has the more convection, and of course Haikui, which is really developing there, wrapping up. May have had a little eye feature there that was quickly obscured by those overshooting tops. Atlantic looks like this, and what a mess it is right now, but a tiny bit of convection blowing up right next to Bermuda from Idalia. That's what National Hurricane Center are looking out for. If there's enough of it, they'll call it a tropical storm again. Gert to its southeast is a tropical storm once again, and to the northeast we've got Jose, which is tangling up with Franklin, both of them turning post-tropical, and in the far distance down the bottom there you just saw a quick glimpse of Tropical Depression 12. Zooming in quickly on the area near Bermuda, and you can see Idalia's remnants still quite expansive, but only that small little burst that's just starting to appear. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific still look very good, over 30 degrees Celsius in that area where we might see that tropical storm in the next week. In the Atlantic, still piping hot in the Gulf of Mexico, well above 30 degrees Celsius, but a few cool gaps now where Franklin and Idalia have tracked in the open Atlantic. The Gulf Stream still looking very good off the coast of the United States. The Bahamas, southern Cuba and Jamaica also looking very hot. Western Pacific, decent values once again still around the Philippines to the east and to the west into the South China Sea. Very warm temperatures there, pushing close to 32 degrees. And the Philippine Sea looking very good, around 31 degrees the highs there. Bay of Bengal still on the rather cool side compared to what it was a couple of weeks ago, but still holding 28 degrees Celsius, which is plenty enough. And in the Arabian Sea, still got some catching up to do. Southwest Indian Ocean still well in its off season, with a little area there of 26 degrees Celsius waters near the northern tip of Madagascar. Also a few points there off Australia, getting up to about 28 degrees Celsius, but in general this area is struggling as you'd expect, and a similar case in the South Pacific with a pretty normal pattern still prevalent there. Compared to average, the Western Pacific is generally above, particularly in the South and East China Seas. Out in the open ocean though, it's near average. In the Eastern Pacific, the Far East is very warm and still that cool area on its way to Hawaii. In the Atlantic, still very warm compared to average, apart from a little cool trail now caused by Franklin and Idalia, southwest of Bermuda. The open Atlantic though, and the main development region is very warm compared to average, 2 to 3 degrees above. Oceanic heat content is sky high still across large parts of the Caribbean Sea, over the Bahamas and into the Gulf of Mexico. Eastern Pacific also looking decent off the coast of Mexico there, that western Pacific coast, and the Western Pacific also looking decent, and to be honest it has less OHC overall than the Atlantic if we look at those colours, which is quite fascinating. So here's a look at the GFS model for the next 5 days, and you can see everything going on there. Jose being completely swallowed up by then very quickly into Franklin, which continues northeastwards and then actually turns southeastwards later on, and towards the end of the 5-day period there's that new tropical cyclone forming in the very low latitude part of the Atlantic. Want to watch that one closely, by the way. And 12L moving off there, turning into a post-tropical cyclone pretty quickly. Will it even get to TS status? National Hurricane Center thinks so. And all the other systems there that we didn't have time to talk about. Of course, a tropical storm warning for Bermuda right now. In the Eastern Pacific, watching out for this system that might develop towards the early part of the coming week, next week, and that could become a substantial tropical cyclone, but it will be moving completely out to sea, so it shouldn't be a particular threat there. It looks like it might be a rather broad system as well. Central Pacific system, chances have dropped on that, model support has dropped. So the Western Pacific Saola not got long left there as it continues to pile along the coast of China. Haikui there moving into Taiwan, still as a powerful typhoon, probably a category 2 maybe, after perhaps a category 3 peak. Watch that one closely, maybe even category 4 peak actually. And Kirogi there just about glancing the coast of Kyushu, and then 1 or 2 other systems could be forming off the woodwork there in the next week. Very complex situation still over there, and looking at the precipitation charts, we're expecting probably another 8 to 10 inches for parts of southern China there, southwestern Guangdong province. That's 250 millimeters, but even higher amounts of rain expected from Haikui, which will mainly be in the eastern part of Taiwan, which will get very high amounts of rainfall over the mountains there. 20 inches depicted, that's 500 millimeters, and over parts of eastern China, southern Fujian province by the looks of things there, getting up to around 14 inches, 350 millimeters. And it will also enhance rainfall in the Philippines, which of course has also been affected by lots of rainfall already from these storms. Another 16 inches in the next 5 days for the northwestern part of Luzon. That's 400 millimeters for some of those areas, which could have significant impacts. Longer range then, day 5 to 10, the GFS goes to town with this Atlantic system, and it's not the only model doing so. That's why we're giving it a 70% chance right now. There it is, becoming a substantial hurricane, probably category 3 there, moving quite close to the Lesser Antilles, but it does pass just to the north of there without causing significant impacts. Quite a small system, and that is generally moving towards the northwest. And will it be a full recurve? We'll find out in the Scilly range. In the Eastern Pacific, what happens with this system? It becomes a substantial hurricane as well, much larger than that Atlantic system, and maybe a little bit stronger, category 3 there by the looks of things, and then it starts to spin itself out as it moves further out to sea. Only a slow weakening trend though, and it does last well after that 10-day period, probably to around 12 or 13 days out. But nothing else in the Eastern Pacific at this time. Western Pacific, what else happens after this flurry of systems? Well, maybe 1 or 2 more systems forming, but it's all quite sloppy here. There's no significant signals of a clear-cut typhoon forming, and a very complex situation up there near Japan as well, of a very large low pressure system by the looks of things. But in general, Western Pacific is much more quieter after this period of activity, and perhaps we'll be looking back towards the Atlantic. You can scan the barcode on the top right hand side and take a look at the Force 13 merch store. We have all of our usual items as well as full season and individual storm animations. Another close shave with Hone. As soon as it forms, we'll be pulling that shirt from our store, and it didn't happen this time around either. In the Scilly range, what happens to that Atlantic hurricane? Quite powerful there, maybe category 4. Well, it's making its mind up, but it does look like it does a full recurve, although it is much further west than previously expected on earlier model runs. So is that a harbinger of a potential issue further on down the line? If those models continue trending westwards, then that might well be the case. By the way, it does affect Bermuda quite heavily in this particular model run in that Scilly range period there. Almost a direct landfall by the looks of things as a category 3. Western Pacific in that super long range as well. What else happens here? Looks like there's a system forming out east, but once again it's not one that gets a massive amount of traction, fighting with another low pressure system there, and one forming in the South China Sea as well. None of them gets typhoon status during that 16-day period, so the Western Pacific does look like it will be much quieter in that time span. Of course, things can change a lot and often do, so be very wary. This is my second last tropical weather bulletin before the Force 13 Eastern Tour takes place. We'll be in Athens, Singapore, Cebu and Hong Kong on these dates. If you want to note them down for your diary, meet and greets available. Send us a message by email, contact@force13.com, or message me on any of our platforms. We're also on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for tropical weather and general weather chat, with over 3,700 members from around the world. September 2nd, 1993 had 3 mature cyclones all active right now. Emily, after its strong peak and very close call with the US East Coast, was pulling back out to sea. Hova in the Eastern Pacific was a category 2 storm. I think it was on its way down at this point quite rapidly, a tiny system it was. But the highlight was Yancy, which was peaking as a 150 mph super typhoon as it was moving through or just east of the Miyakojima Islands and just west of Okinawa on this day 30 years ago. Back to today, and I'm afraid we are still code red for both typhoons that are active. The next name in the Atlantic is Katia. In the Eastern Pacific it's another Hova, and in the Central Pacific it's still Hone. 51 storms so far this year. In the Western Pacific the next name is Yunyung. In the North Indian Ocean it will be Tej. So could be quite a lot more activity on the horizon as we take a look at those following names on those lists. Next name in the Australian region is Jasper, Southwest Indian Ocean Alvaro, and the South Pacific will see Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.